the series. And I said, no, no, you don't understand. This is mine. My name's on it. I did this, and I think it was late January, early February. And they said, no, no, you don't understand. I remember the shot from the show. No, no, you don't. I intentionally mimicked the angle. My impulse engine is actually too dark. I've got to lighten that up. So I'll be changing that. I've got a different texture inside the rings that are just behind the warp domes. And I have found out since that they were actually the same colors as the rest of the warp engine. It was just the shape and the shadows that made it appear darker, so I may change those. Also, one thing that's always a tip-off on mine, I have these panels underneath the warp engines as slightly darker than the rest of the warp engines themselves. It kind of makes them stand out, and maybe that's wrong. The originals were the same colors as the rest of the warp engines. But again, these are all things that indicate that it is my model. I know nobody else who does this. I'm the only one that I know of that has these beam supports underneath the sensor domes, which were actually there in the original series. And you can see them most clearly on the shots with the clear sensor domes for the original pilot, the cage. That's where I got the idea. I mimic that. I make no bones about it. Also, this can't be an original frame grab from Star Trek because of this light on the port rear top of the saucer dome. It was actually never lit. That was actually painted on the original. Mine are lit. Also, I have more windows on the opposite side here. The original only had two. And I make all of my round ports very bright because I tend to think that they're sensors or something. And then my windows actually have rooms. Now there's nothing in the rooms. There's just light panels on various spots on the top and some walls to simulate a room. So there's no detail in them. But that's not the point. I'm not trying to make something that looks like a ship that flies through space. I'm trying to make something that looks like the 11-foot model, which was just lit with translucent pieces of plastic for the windows, and then a lot of the windows were actually just painted on or were black so that no light could come through. Because, again, I'm not trying to make some fanciful starship that's going to run through the stars. I'm just trying to make what I remember the 11-foot long Starship Enterprise looking like from the original series. So these are all my renders. The animations are my animations. I hope you enjoy them. If you don't, move along. Go bother somebody else. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed a glimpse into how I make images and movies. And I have been thinking about posting some tutorials on how to build starships the way I do, or at least build models the way I do. I am currently making a completely different model. I'm making the Constellation from the Doomsday Machine, and I'll be happy to post renders and those movies when I am ready. But again, it's going to look very similar to the original series. It will simply have some more detail than you're used to seeing in the shots, because of course I'm doing it with a computer. But that's it. They're mine. Nobody else's. Made exactly this. Are there people who are more talented? Absolutely. Are there other people who do something similar? Yeah, without a doubt. But this one model is my model. These images are my images. And if you can't accept that, that's your problem. But here, just for fun, is what my USS Constellation, the doomed starship commanded by Commodore Decker, is going to look like. I'll pause this. This renders out pretty quick in just a couple of minutes, but that's still too long to wait. Okay, this is the current state of my model of the USS Constellation, the doomed ship commanded by Commodore William Deckard, who sadly kills himself during the course of the episode. But Kirk then uses this the remains of the hulking remains of this ship to destroy the Doomsday Machine. When I'm done, this will be torn up and ravaged. But right now, I'm trying out some different techniques for specularity. Although the original model didn't have this, this is what mine looks like now. I am not done. It has more detail than the original model. When this episode was being planned, the gentleman that was hired to build the 11-foot version of the Enterprise, he also built the 3-foot test version, which was used, like I said earlier, in every episode during the credits. But Richard Dattin, D-A-T-I-N, and they approached him. They said, "Hey, we need a destroyed starship. We want you to build another 3-foot starship model that's all bashed up from this giant weapon." And he said, "I can't do it in your time frame." So they thought about it and wondered how could they build a model that they could use to film, that they could also pretty much wreck and destroy any way they wanted. And somebody came up with the bright idea of buying the long box model of the Enterprise, which had NCC 1701 and USS Enterprise across the saucer top there. And they either there was a version of the model that came out with all 12 different names of starships and had enough numbers for all the different registries. But I think this was before that. This was during the run of the actual original series. I think they used dry transfer letters for USS Constellation, and the NCC 1017 is the same as NCC 1701, just with the numbers rearranged. So they cut up the decals and just rearranged them a little bit to make a different starship. And then they used, I think, literally a butane lighter to melt different sections of the hull. They spray painted the whole thing white and put on the decals and painted a couple of windows, and that was it. There's not much to the way of detail to the Constellation, and usually they shot it from pretty far away. This is about the closest shot that appeared in the episode. As a matter of fact, the Blu-ray looks like this, and you can actually see what I was talking about before. It's the same shot, but it's much contrastier. They make them much brighter because it's what makes the interior shots look better, and they didn't care about these. They, as a matter of fact, replaced them with CBS Digital's version of the effect, which was all computer generated. Now, mine is also computer generated, but I don't have anything to do with CBS Digital. I am not a professional artist. This is just my interpretation, and as you can see from a comparison, mine already has more detail. I'm going to have on the flashing running lights, and I've got, although I'm changing them still, I've got some subtle weathering on here, and I'm going to have more of the textures that were shown on the original Enterprise as well, and then I'll damage up the model and add all the damaged textures and some different hull levels inside so that it doesn't look like just one floor or a model that's been opened. But to the quick eye, to the scene when I film it, when I'm done, I've got the exact same goal in mind as I did with my Enterprise. I want people to say, boy, the effects of the 1960s looked really good. And this is not a retexture of my model, of my Enterprise model. This is entirely rebuilt to reflect the fact that it should look like the AMT long box version of the model. So the BC deck is different. The bridge dome is different. The warp engines don't taper as much. There's a subtle difference to the shape of the engineering hull, the shape of the impulse engines, and the linear accelerator is different, and the shape of the deflector dish in front is different. It more closely resembles the original pilot deflector dish, which was in the long box model, And then in the 1970s, they replaced it with a dish that looked like a pie dish. I mean, it was literally flat on the bottom and it had a curved edge. The original dish used in the pilot and in, I think also in Where No Man Has Gone Before, looks more like a classic dish with a spike in the middle. So it's very rounded. When they went to production, they cut it down so that it didn't look quite so big. And you could see some of the detail behind the deflector dish. Mine's actually got a flaw there. Mine's a little too dark behind the deflector dish, but I'm hoping to be able to change that. Anyway, when I have enough detail on this and I've damaged up the model, I'm hoping to film it, and with the film grain that I'm going to add, you will see less of the specularity differences, but you should see that there is some detail there. It should help fool the eye into thinking that it is bigger than an 18-inch model, which is what the original was. The original for the Constellation was an 18-inch model, an AMT model that was put out in the 1960s. Anyway, if you want to see that, you're not going to see it anywhere else but with me, at least not with this model. This one is purely mine, just like my Enterprise. If you have any questions, you can ask. I'm happy to teach what little I know, and I will also be watermarking all of my images and movies from now on so that no one can claim that they're not mine. And anybody who steals them, I know how to find the watermark, and anybody who steals my work, I will call them out. But this is my product, it's my work, and if you still don't believe it, I don't know what to tell you. I've shown you my models, I've shown you how I make my images. The only thing I haven't done is sit here and record me animating these things for hours at a time or days at a time. And I'm obviously not going to do that. There's limits to what you can post on YouTube. This is it, man. This is my evidence. I hope you have a good day. I hope you like what you saw. And I hope you stay tuned in. I hope you subscribe. And I hope you like what you see. Have a good day.